The sun was bright in the sky on that special Tuesday morning in London. People lined the streets early, waiting to see the royal family. Some had been there since dawn, holding small flags and phones ready to take pictures. Children sat on their parents' shoulders to get a better view. The crowd grew bigger as the time for the royal visit came closer. Today was the yearly charity service at Westminster Abbey. This old church had seen hundreds of years of royal events. Its tall towers reached to the sky, and its big wooden doors stood open wide. Inside, workers rushed to make everything perfect. They put fresh flowers near the altar and polished the wooden seats until they shone. In their home at Kensington Palace, the royal family got ready for the day. Prince William stood in front of a mirror, fixing his dark blue tie. He wore a perfectly fitted suit that showed his tall, strong build. At 42 years old, William had grown into his role as the future king with calm confidence. His face showed both his father's features and memories of his mother Diana's warm smile. In another room, Princess Kate helped their youngest child, Prince Louis, with his small tie. The 6-year-old boy wiggled and laughed as his mother tried to smooth his hair. Kate wore a light blue dress that fell to her knees, with matching shoes. Her brown hair was pulled back in a neat style, with a small hat that matched her dress sitting at an angle on her head. "Stand still for just one more minute, Louis," Kate said with a patient smile. Louis tried his best, but couldn't help bouncing on his toes with excitement. 9-year-old Princess Charlotte walked into the room, already dressed in a pretty light pink dress with a ribbon in her hair. She carried a small white purse that matched her shoes. "You look beautiful, Charlotte," Kate said, admiring her daughter. Charlotte did a small spin. "Will there be many people watching us today?" she asked. "Yes, quite a few," Kate replied. "Remember what we practiced." Charlotte stood straight and gave a perfect small wave. "Like this, Mummy." Kate nodded with pride. Charlotte had been practicing royal duties since she was very young. She already understood much about her special role in the family. Prince George, the oldest at 11, joined them last. He looked serious in his suit, which was a smaller version of his father's. As second in line to the throne after William, George often tried to copy his father's calm behavior. "Is everyone ready?" William asked as he entered the room. He looked at his family with pride and checked his watch. "The cars will be here in 10 minutes." The children gathered their small items. George had a program about the charity event. Charlotte held her purse, and Louis clutched a small toy car that he hoped to keep in his pocket during the service. A palace worker knocked softly on the door. "Your Royal Highnesses, the cars are ready." William thanked the worker. He turned to his family and smiled. "Remember, today we're supporting children who need help around the world. This isn't just about us looking nice for pictures." Kate nodded. She had spent weeks helping plan this event for the children's charities they supported. "The children understand, don't you?" she asked, looking at her 3 children. The young royals nodded. Even little Louis knew this was important work for the family. They walked together through the palace halls, past paintings of royal family members from long ago. Workers bowed their heads respectfully as the family passed. Outside, 3 shiny black cars waited. The morning sun made them gleam. William helped Kate into the middle car, then helped the children climb in after her. He got in last, closing the door behind him. The car engines started quietly, and they began the drive through London streets toward Westminster Abbey, where hundreds of people waited to see them. The royal cars moved slowly through the busy London streets. Police on motorcycles rode in front to clear the way. People lined both sides of the road, waving flags and taking pictures. Inside the middle car, Prince Louis pressed his face against the window, amazed by all the people. "Look at all of them," Louis said. His small hands made marks on the clean window. Kate gently pulled him back. "Remember not to touch the glass, darling," she said with a smile. "We want to look our best when we step out." Prince George sat tall in his seat, watching the crowds with serious eyes. He leaned toward his father. "How many people do you think are here?" he asked. William looked out at the sea of faces. "Thousands," he said. "They've come from all over to be here today." Charlotte smoothed her pink dress carefully. "I hope they like my dress," she said. "You look perfect," Kate assured her. "Just remember to smile and wave. But not too much." As the cars got closer to Westminster Abbey, the crowd grew even bigger. People pushed forward, hoping to see the royal family. Police officers worked hard to keep everyone safe behind the barriers. The Abbey stood tall against the blue sky. Its stone walls had watched over royal events for nearly 1,000 years. Kings and queens had been crowned there. Royal weddings and funerals had taken place under its high roof. Today, the old building waited for William, Kate, and their children. "We're here," William said as the car slowed down. He looked at his family. "Ready?" The children nodded. Even Louis, who was usually full of energy, became quiet. He knew this was an important moment. The first car stopped, and security men in dark suits stepped out. They looked around carefully before opening the door for the second car. The crowd noise grew louder as people realized the royal family had arrived. William stepped out first. The sunlight caught the gold buttons on his suit. He turned and helped Kate from the car. Her blue dress moved gently in the breeze as she stood up. The crowd cheered at the sight of her. George came next, looking much like a younger version of his father. He stood straight and tall beside William. Charlotte stepped out gracefully, remembering to smile at the people watching. Last came Louis, blinking in the bright sunlight. He stayed close to his mother's side. The family stood for a moment at the bottom of the Abbey steps. Photographers took hundreds of pictures. The children had been taught how to ignore the camera flashes and the shouts of the photographers. "Your Royal Highnesses, look this way. Princess Charlotte, Princess Charlotte. Prince Louis, give us a wave." William placed his hand gently on George's shoulder. Kate held Louis's hand firmly so he wouldn't run off. Charlotte stood between her brothers, her back straight like she had practiced. The Dean of Westminster, an older man in long black and white robes, came down the steps to greet them. He bowed his head to William and Kate. "Welcome to Westminster Abbey, Your Royal Highnesses," he said with a warm smile. "We are honored by your presence today." William shook the Dean's hand. "Thank you for hosting this important event," he said. "The charities we honor today do such valuable work for children." The Dean turned to the children with a kind smile. "And welcome to you, young princes and princess. The Abbey is very happy to have you visit." George and Charlotte gave small bows as they had been taught. Louis tried to copy them, but ended up doing more of a bounce than a bow. Some people in the crowd laughed softly at his sweet attempt. Kate leaned down to whisper in Louis's ear. "Well done," she said, even though his bow wasn't perfect. She wanted him to feel good about trying. The family began to climb the stone steps toward the great doors of the Abbey. William and Kate walked slightly ahead, with the children following. As they reached the halfway point, they turned to wave at the crowd. The people cheered loudly. Inside the huge doorway, cool air and the smell of candles and flowers waited for them. The famous Abbey, with its colored windows and stone columns, was ready to welcome the royal family for another historic day. Inside Westminster Abbey, the royal family walked slowly down the long center aisle. The stone floor was covered with a red carpet for the special day. Rows of wooden seats filled with people stretched on both sides. Everyone stood up when William, Kate, and the children entered. Louis held tightly to Kate's hand, his eyes wide as he looked up at the high ceiling. The Abbey roof seemed to reach to the sky. Colorful light streamed through the stained glass windows, making patterns on the floor and walls. "It's so big," Louis whispered loudly. Some guests smiled at his honest wonder. Charlotte walked with perfect posture, her eyes moving from side to side as she saw important people she recognized. She gave small nods to those who caught her eye. George stayed close to his father, copying William's steady walk and calm face. The soft sound of organ music filled the large space. The music was slow and beautiful, matching the royals' careful steps down the aisle. Some people took quick pictures with their phones, even though they had been asked not to. In the front rows sat other members of the royal family. William's father, King Charles, was there with Queen Camilla. They smiled as they watched the family approach. William's brother Harry was not there, as he now lived in America with his wife and children. Also in the front rows were important government leaders and the heads of the children's charities being honored today. They wore their best clothes and watched with respect as the royal family came near. William and Kate stopped to greet King Charles and Queen Camilla. The children gave small bows and curtsies to their grandfather and step-grandmother. King Charles reached out to touch Louis's cheek with affection. "They've grown so much," Queen Camilla said quietly to Kate. Kate nodded with a smile. "Too quickly," she replied. The family then moved to their special seats in the front row. These chairs were a bit larger and more comfortable than the others. They were placed where everyone in the Abbey could see the royal family. William helped Kate get settled, then made sure each child was sitting properly. Louis wiggled between his mother and Charlotte, excited by everything he saw. George sat next to his father, his back straight and his hands folded in his lap. The Dean of Westminster moved to the front of the church. He raised his hands, and everyone became quiet. The service was about to begin. "Welcome to Westminster Abbey," the Dean said in a voice that carried to every corner. "We gather today to honor those who work tirelessly to help children in need around the world." The first part of the service included songs from a children's choir. 20 boys and girls in white robes walked in from a side door. They lined up in front of the altar and began to sing. Their young voices filled the Abbey with clear, beautiful music. Louis was amazed by the singing. He sat forward in his seat, his mouth slightly open as he listened. Charlotte swayed gently to the music. Even serious George seemed moved by the children's voices. After the choir finished, they walked past the royal family on their way out. One small girl in the choir looked directly at Charlotte and gave her a tiny wave. Charlotte smiled back, happy to connect with another child her age. Next came speeches from people who ran the charities. They talked about helping children who were sick, poor, or in danger. They spoke of building schools, hospitals, and safe places for children to play. Some showed pictures on large screens of the children they had helped. Kate listened carefully to each speaker. This work was close to her heart. She had visited many of these charities and had seen firsthand how they helped children. Sometimes she reached over to touch one of her children's hands, grateful that they were healthy and safe. William took notes on a small pad. He would speak later and wanted to mention things from each charity. He nodded at important points the speakers made. The children watched their father, seeing how serious he was about this work. As one speaker told a sad story about children who had lost their parents, Louis turned to Kate with worried eyes. "Are those children alone now?" he whispered. Kate leaned close to him. "The charity helps them find new families who love them," she explained softly. Louis nodded, his face showing that he understood how important this work was. The service continued with more speeches and songs. After an hour, Louis began to get restless. He swung his legs and looked around the Abbey instead of at the speakers. Kate noticed this and reached into her small blue purse. She took out a tiny notepad and a pencil, passing them quietly to Louis. Louis smiled at his mother and began to draw. He made careful pictures of the Abbey's tall windows and the people around him. This kept him busy and quiet, which was important during the serious parts of the service. Charlotte sat still and listened, but even she was finding it hard to concentrate after so long. She leaned slightly toward her mother. "How much longer?" she whispered. Kate held up 3 fingers, meaning 3 more speakers before the service would end. Charlotte nodded and sat up straight again. She was learning to be patient during long royal events. George watched everything with interest. He knew that one day he would be king, and these events would be part of his life forever. He wanted to understand how they worked. When an important charity leader mentioned helping children learn to read, George nodded. He loved reading and thought all children should have books. Now it was William's turn to speak. He squeezed Kate's hand gently before standing up and walking to the front. The abbey became very quiet as everyone waited to hear from the future king. William stood tall at the wooden podium. His voice was clear and strong as he began to speak about the importance of helping children. Every child deserves safety, love, and a chance to learn, William said. The charities we honor today make this possible for thousands of children who might otherwise be forgotten. As their father spoke, the three royal children watched with pride. Even Louis stopped drawing to listen. He might not understand every word, but he knew his father was saying important things. William talked about visiting some of the charities with Kate. He described meeting children who had overcome big problems with help from these organizations. His voice became emotional when he spoke about a boy who had lost his parents but was now happy with a new family. Seeing the difference these charities make reminds us why this work matters so much, William said. As a father, I want all children to have the chances my own children have. Kate's eyes shone with pride as she listened. When William finished speaking, everyone clapped loudly. He walked back to his seat, and Kate reached for his hand when he sat down. That was lovely, she whispered. After William's speech, there was one more song from the choir. Then the dean asked everyone to stand for a final prayer. The royal family stood with perfect posture, heads slightly bowed. Louis tried to copy his parents and siblings, closing his eyes tightly for the prayer. When the prayer ended, the dean thanked everyone for coming. The royal family would now lead the way out of the abbey, but first they needed to greet some of the charity workers in a receiving line. William and Kate moved to the side of the altar area where 20 people waited to meet them. The children stood nearby, watching how their parents talked to each guest. Kate was especially good at making people feel comfortable. She looked each person in the eye and asked questions about their work. She remembered details about the charities and mentioned them as she spoke. Your program helping children learn music has grown so much since I visited last year, she said to one woman. The woman looked surprised and pleased that Kate remembered. Yes, we now have twice as many students, she said with a smile. William shook hands firmly with each person. He thanked them for their work and asked thoughtful questions. When a man mentioned working in a poor area of London, William asked about specific problems they faced there. While their parents talked, the children stood quietly. A charity worker with kind eyes bent down to speak to them. Do you enjoy school? She asked Charlotte. Charlotte nodded. Yes, very much. I like art and science best, she answered clearly. The woman smiled. That's wonderful. Many of the children we help are getting to go to school for the first time. Charlotte thought about this. Everyone should get to learn, she said. The woman looked impressed by her answer. George spoke with a man who worked with children who love sports. Do you play football with them? George asked, his eyes showing interest. Every week, the man said. It helps them forget their troubles for a while. Louis mostly watched, but when a woman with a bright scarf smiled at him, he stepped forward. I like your drawings, she said, noticing the notepad he still held. Louis carefully opened it to show her his picture of the abbey. I drew the big windows, he explained. After meeting the charity workers, it was time for the royal family to walk through the abbey to the back doors. This walk would let more people see them up close. The Dean of Westminster led the way, with William and Kate following. The children walked behind their parents in age order. George, then Charlotte, then Louis. As they moved down the center aisle, people on both sides smiled and nodded. Some lucky guests in the aisle seats got to shake hands with William and Kate. The family moved slowly, making sure to give attention to both sides of the aisle. Kate bent down to speak to a girl in a wheelchair. The girl's face lit up as the princess took a moment to talk with her. William stopped to shake hands with an old soldier who wore medals on his jacket. The man stood as straight as he could and looked proud to meet the prince. Thank you for your service, William said to the old soldier. The man nodded. Thank you for remembering us, sir. The children followed their parents' example. George shook hands with a few people, looking them in the eye as his father had taught him. Charlotte smiled and sometimes spoke softly to people who greeted her. Louis waved at everyone, making many people smile at his friendly nature. Halfway down the aisle, a small boy about Louis's age held out a drawing he had made. Louis stopped to look at it. The drawing showed Westminster Abbey with stick figures of the royal family in front. Louis grinned at the boy. "I made a drawing too," Louis said, holding up his notepad. The two boys compared pictures for a moment before Kate gently guided Louis forward. Near the back of the abbey, a very old woman sat with a blanket over her knees. She had been waiting for hours to see the royal family. As Kate approached, the woman reached out a shaking hand. Kate took it in both of hers. "I remember when your husband was born," the old woman said in a thin voice. "I've watched him grow up, and now I see his beautiful children." Kate was touched by these words. "Thank you for your kind thoughts over all these years," she said. The woman smiled with tears in her eyes. William noticed this exchange and came over. He bent down to speak to the woman, asking her name and where she lived. The simple kindness made the woman's day special. As they neared the back doors of the abbey, they saw a group of children from one of the charities. The children wore matching blue t-shirts and looked excited to see the royal family. They had been practicing a song to sing. William and Kate stopped to listen as the children sang a short, happy song about friendship. The royal children watched with interest. When the song ended, everyone clapped. A small girl from the singing group stepped forward with a basket of handmade cards. She curtsied to Charlotte and held out the basket. "These are for you and your family," the girl said shyly. "We made them ourselves." Charlotte smiled warmly. "Thank you very much. They're beautiful," she said, taking the basket carefully. She looked through a few of the cards, showing real interest in the children's work. Louis peeked into the basket too. "Look at all the colors," he said. The charity children beamed with happiness that the royal family liked their cards. Their teacher took a photo of them with William, Kate, and the children. This picture would hang in their classroom as a special memory. Finally, the family reached the great doors at the back of the abbey. Outside, the crowd had grown even larger. People pressed against barriers, hoping for one more look at the royals. Police officers kept everyone safe and made sure there was a clear path to the waiting cars. Before stepping outside, Kate helped Charlotte fix her hair ribbon, which had come loose. William brushed some lint from George's shoulder. Louis bounced on his toes, excited to be outside again after the long service. The Dean of Westminster thanked the family once more for coming. "Your presence today has meant so much to everyone, especially the charities," he said. William smiled. "The honor was ours," he replied. "The work these charities do changes lives every day." Kate nodded in agreement. "We hope our visit helps bring attention to their important work," she added. The huge doors opened, letting in bright sunlight and the sound of the waiting crowd. The royal family paused for a moment, standing tall together. They were ready to step outside and greet the people of London once more. The royal family stepped out of Westminster Abbey into the bright afternoon sun. The crowd cheered loudly when they appeared. Hundreds of phones and cameras rose in the air to capture the moment. William and Kate paused at the top of the stone steps, with their 3 children in front of them. They stood together like a perfect family picture. Louis blinked at the sudden sunlight, but remembered to smile and wave. Charlotte stood with perfect posture, giving her practiced royal wave to the crowd. George stood tall like his father, waving more seriously. The people loved seeing the children, and many called out their names: Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis. A group of school children at the front of the crowd held up a large handmade sign that said, "We love our royal family," in colorful letters. When Charlotte noticed it, she pointed it out to her brothers. All 3 children waved directly at the school children, who jumped with excitement. Near the bottom of the steps, a line of important people waited to say goodbye to the royal family. The Prime Minister was there with other government leaders. The heads of the charities stood nearby, along with the Abbey staff who had helped arrange the day. William and Kate moved down the steps, stopping to shake hands and chat briefly with each person. The children followed, saying polite goodbyes as they had been taught. Louis tried his best to copy his parents' handshakes, though his small hand could barely wrap around the adults' hands. A woman in a bright yellow dress held out a bouquet of flowers to Kate. "These are for you, Your Royal Highness," she said with a curtsy. Kate smiled warmly. "They're beautiful. Thank you very much," she said, taking the flowers. The sweet smell of roses and lilies mixed with the fresh spring air. Another person gave Charlotte a small bouquet of her own. The little princess's face lit up as she accepted the pink and purple flowers. She brought them to her nose to smell them, then looked up with a genuine smile. "Thank you. They smell lovely," she said clearly. Louis watched his sister get flowers and looked around hopefully. A kind-looking man noticed and stepped forward with a small bunch of daisies tied with a blue ribbon. "For you, Prince Louis," the man said with a bow. Louis's eyes grew wide with surprise and happiness. "Thank you," he said loudly, making people nearby laugh at his excitement. George received a book about protecting nature, which was perfect for him since he loved animals and the outdoors. He thanked the person sincerely and tucked the book carefully under his arm. As they reached the bottom of the steps, a small girl in a wheelchair waited with her parents. She looked nervous but excited to see the royal family up close. Kate noticed her and walked over with a warm smile. "Hello there," Kate said, bending down to be at eye level with the girl. "What's your name?" The girl's voice was shy and quiet. "Emma," she said. "It's very nice to meet you, Emma," Kate replied. She noticed a drawing on Emma's lap. "Did you make that picture?" Emma nodded and held it up. It showed a princess in a blue dress that looked a lot like Kate. "It's wonderful," Kate said. "You're very talented." William came over to meet Emma too. "That's a very good drawing," he said with a smile. "You've captured my wife perfectly." Emma's face glowed with happiness. Her parents looked grateful for this special moment with the royal family. Charlotte, seeing what was happening, walked over to Emma too. The two girls were about the same age. Charlotte looked at the drawing, and then at Emma. "Do you like to draw?" Charlotte asked. Emma nodded again. "Yes, I draw every day." "Me too," Charlotte said. "I love art class at school." For a moment, they were just two girls talking about something they both enjoyed. The crowd watched this sweet exchange with smiles and some with tears in their eyes. It showed how the royal children were learning to connect with all kinds of people. Meanwhile, Louis had spotted the royal cars waiting at the curb. "Are we going home now?" he asked his father, tugging slightly on William's sleeve. William bent down to Louis's level. "Soon," he said. "We just need to say goodbye to a few more people first." Louis nodded but looked at the cars again. He was getting tired after the long day, though he tried not to show it. The excitement, the long service, and standing on his best behavior were wearing on the young prince. Kate noticed that all three children were starting to tire. She caught William's eye and gave a small nod toward the cars. He understood her silent message. It was time to wrap up their visit. William nodded to his security team, letting them know the family would be leaving soon. The head security man spoke quietly into his wrist radio, telling the drivers to get ready. The crowd sensed that the royal visit was coming to an end and pressed forward for one last look. Kate gathered the children closer as they prepared to leave. "Just a few more minutes," she said to them with an encouraging smile. Louis leaned against her leg, clearly tired but still trying to be good. Before getting into their cars, tradition called for one final wave to the crowd from the bottom of the steps. William and Kate moved into position with their children in front of them. On a silent count of 3, all 5 royals raised their hands to wave. The crowd cheered wildly at this perfect family moment. Camera flashes lit up like lightning as photographers captured the scene. This picture would be on the front page of newspapers around the world the next day. As they waved, A sudden gust of wind blew through the area. Charlotte's hair ribbon came completely loose and flew into the air. The pink ribbon danced on the breeze above the crowd. People gasped and pointed as it floated higher. For a second, Charlotte looked upset. The ribbon had been a perfect match to her dress. But then something unexpected happened. A tall man in the crowd reached up and caught the ribbon as it floated down. The crowd clapped and cheered at this lucky catch. The man, looking surprised at his own success, stepped forward and handed the ribbon to a police officer at the barrier. The officer brought it to William, who thanked him with a handshake. William then bent down and gave the ribbon to Charlotte. "Look at that," William said with a smile. "It came back to you." Charlotte's face brightened as she took the ribbon. "Thank you," she called to the man who had caught it. The man looked thrilled that the princess had spoken directly to him. Kate helped Charlotte put the ribbon safely in her small purse. "We'll fix it in the car," she promised. This small event with the ribbon made the crowd happy. It was an unplanned moment that felt real and natural. People would talk about it later as one of their favorite memories of the day. Now it was finally time to leave. Security men opened the doors of the waiting cars. William helped Kate into the middle car, then lifted Louis in after her. The little prince was clearly tired now, rubbing his eyes with his small fists. George and Charlotte climbed in next, sitting across from their mother and brother. Just before William got into the car, he turned for one more wave to the crowd. His face showed how much he appreciated their support. Then he ducked into the car and closed the door behind him. Inside the car, the royal family relaxed for the first time in hours. Louis immediately snuggled against Kate's side, still holding his small bunch of daisies. Charlotte took her ribbon from her purse, and Kate helped her tie it back in her hair. George opened his new book about nature and began to look through the pictures. "You were all wonderful today," William said to his children. "I'm very proud of how well you behaved." Kate nodded in agreement. "Even through that very long service," she added with a smile. "I know it wasn't easy to sit still for so long." Louis yawned widely. "The choir was pretty," he said sleepily. "And I liked meeting the boy who made drawings like mine." Charlotte carefully arranged her flowers on her lap. "I like talking to Emma," she said, "the girl in the wheelchair who draws pictures." George looked up from his book. "The man who plays football with children who need help," he said thoughtfully. "That's what I remember most. I think sports can really help people feel better when they're sad." William and Kate exchanged proud glances. Their children had not just gone through the motions of a royal visit. They had really connected with people and understood the purpose of the day. As the cars pulled away from Westminster Abbey, the crowd waved one last time. Police officers kept the roads clear so the royal family could travel safely back to Kensington Palace. The great bells of the Abbey began to ring, their deep sounds filling the air as the cars disappeared down the London streets. Inside their car, the royal family continued their quiet conversation. They talked about the people they had met and the things they had seen. Even though they were tired, they felt good about the work they had done that day. They had brought attention to important charities and had made many people happy just by being there. The royal cars moved through London, passing famous sights like Big Ben and Buckingham Palace. People on the streets stopped to watch and wave as the small line of black cars went by. Inside the middle car, Louis had fallen asleep against Kate's shoulder, still clutching his daisies. His small face looked peaceful after the busy day. Charlotte watched the city pass by her window. She saw tourists taking pictures, red buses full of people, and shops with bright signs. Sometimes people on the street recognized the royal cars and pointed excitedly. "Look, Mummy," Charlotte said, pointing to a group of schoolchildren on a field trip. "They're wearing uniforms like mine." Kate looked where Charlotte was pointing. "Yes, they are," she said. "Perhaps they're visiting the museums today." George was deep in his new book about nature. He looked up only when William tapped his knee and pointed out the window. "Look," William said. "They've put up the charity posters we helped design. On a large wall was a colorful poster showing children playing together. Across the top were the words, "Every child deserves a chance to play." This was part of a campaign William and Kate had worked on to help build safe playgrounds in poor areas. "They look good," George said, studying the poster as they drove past. "Do you think people will donate money when they see them?" William nodded. "I hope so. That's why days like today are important. They help people learn about the good work these charities do." As they neared Kensington Palace, their home in London, Kate's phone made a soft sound. She checked it and smiled. "The charity leaders sent a message," she told William. "They've already received more donations this afternoon than they usually get in a week. Our visit really helped." William looked pleased. "That's wonderful news. It makes all the standing and smiling worth it, doesn't it?" The cars turned through the gates of Kensington Palace. Unlike Buckingham Palace, which was mainly for official royal business, Kensington Palace was their real home. The part where they lived was private, away from the areas tourists could visit. As the cars stopped at their private entrance, Louis woke up. He blinked sleepily and lifted his head from Kate's shoulder. "Are we home?" he asked. "Yes, darling," Kate said. "We're home now." Staff members opened the car doors. One took the flowers from Kate and Charlotte to put in water. Another helped carry the cards and gifts they had received. The family stepped out of the car and stretched after the ride. The gardens around their home were beautiful in the late afternoon light. Spring flowers bloomed in neat beds, and the grass was perfectly green. It was a peaceful place away from the noise and crowds of the city. "Can we play outside before dinner?" Charlotte asked. After sitting still for so long, the children were ready to run and be active. Kate looked at William. "I think that's a good idea," she said. "Some fresh air would be nice after being in the Abbey all day." William checked his watch. "You have 1 hour before dinner," he told the children. "Change out of your nice clothes first." The children hurried inside to change. Within 10 minutes, they were back outside in comfortable play clothes. Louis wore jeans and a blue sweater. Charlotte had on leggings and a pink shirt. George wore casual pants and a green shirt. They looked like any normal children now as they ran across the grass. Their security team watched from a distance, giving them space to play while keeping them safe. Kate had changed too, into a simple dress and flat shoes. She joined the children outside, kicking a ball with Louis. William came out a few minutes later in a casual shirt and pants. He carried a cricket bat and some balls. "Who wants to play?" he called. George and Charlotte ran over immediately. William showed George how to hold the cricket bat properly. Charlotte and Louis took turns trying to catch the balls. As they played together in their private garden, no one would guess they had just been at a formal royal event. Here, they were just a family enjoying time together. They laughed and ran, and acted like any other family. A palace worker watched from a window, smiling at the scene. The royal family had many duties and responsibilities, but they also knew how to be normal and have fun together. This balance was what made them so special and so loved by the people of Britain. As evening came, the family went inside for dinner. The palace dining room was not as fancy as people might imagine. It was a warm, comfortable room with family photos on the walls. A large wooden table sat in the middle, set simply for the family meal. The children washed their hands and took their usual places at the table. Louis needed a special cushion to sit high enough. Charlotte arranged her napkin neatly on her lap, and George helped pour water into everyone's glasses. The palace chef had prepared their favorite meal after the long day: roast chicken with vegetables and mashed potatoes. For dessert, there was apple crumble with ice cream. The food was simple but delicious. "Tell Nanny Maria about your day," Kate said as they began to eat. Nanny Maria had stayed home today, but was joining them for dinner. The children spoke all at once, eager to share their experiences. "I met a boy who draws just like me," Louis said. "I talked to a girl named Emma who loves art," Charlotte added. "The choir was really good," George said. And I learned about sports helping children feel better when they're sad. Nanny Maria smiled, listening carefully to each child. It sounds like you all paid attention and learned important things, she said. As they ate, William's phone buzzed. He checked it quickly. The Prime Minister sends his thanks, he told Kate. He says the event was a great success. Kate nodded. The charities must be pleased with all the new attention. After dinner, it was time for the evening routine. The children had baths, brushed their teeth, and put on pajamas. Even royal children had to follow these normal rules. In the cozy family room, they gathered for a quiet time before bed. William sat in a big armchair with Louis on his lap. Kate sat on the sofa with Charlotte beside her. George sat cross-legged on the floor with a puzzle he was working on. "Shall we see if we're on the news?" William asked, picking up the remote control. The children nodded excitedly. William turned on the television and found the evening news. Sure enough, their visit to Westminster Abbey was the top story. The royal family brought elegance and warmth to Westminster Abbey today, the news reporter said. The screen showed clips of their arrival, the service, and their departure. "Look, there I am," Louis pointed when he saw himself on the screen. "Your wave was perfect," Kate told him with a smile. The news showed Charlotte talking to Emma, the girl in the wheelchair. Princess Charlotte showed particular kindness to a young artist, the reporter said. Charlotte looked pleased, but also a bit shy about being praised on television. Emma was nice, she said simply. The report ended with the scene of the family's final wave, including the moment when Charlotte's ribbon flew away and was caught by the man in the crowd. "That was lucky," George said. "The wind was really strong." When the news ended, William turned off the television. "Time for bed now," he said. "You all need rest after such a busy day." The children didn't argue. They were tired from all the excitement. Each child hugged both parents goodnight. Kate helped Louis brush his teeth one more time, as he hadn't done a very good job the first time. William listened to Charlotte read one page from her book, as was their nightly tradition. George, being older, read by himself for 15 minutes before turning out his light. Kate checked on each child one last time, making sure they were tucked in properly. Back in the sitting room, William and Kate finally had some quiet time together. They sat on the sofa with cups of tea, looking at some of the photos from the day on their phones. "They did so well today," Kate said, showing William a sweet picture of Louis looking up at the Abbey ceiling in wonder. William nodded. "They're getting better at these events every time," he said. Even Louis managed to sit still during most of the service. Kate smiled. "Did you see Charlotte with that girl Emma? She has such natural kindness." And George asking thoughtful questions about the charities. William added with pride, "He's really beginning to understand what our work is about." They continued to talk quietly about the day, both feeling proud of their family's contribution. The visit to Westminster Abbey had been more than just a formal appearance. It had touched people's hearts and helped important causes. Outside the palace windows, London continued its busy evening life. People all over the city and beyond were talking about the royal family's visit. Photos were being shared, news stories written, and charity donations were still coming in. Inside their home, William and Kate finished their tea, ready for some rest themselves. Tomorrow would bring new royal duties, school for the children, and all the normal parts of family life. But today had been special, a day when Prince William, Kate,